Everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Thursday, February 6th, 2025. I'm your host, George Kurt, joined by the one and only Cody Roadcap. Are you ready for this weekend, Cody?
Yeah. I mean, today was NBA trade deadline, so that was the most important thing going on today. But now that we're past that, we can get back to football. My TikTok is full of all the Jameis Winston down in New Orleans Super Bowl, running into horses, asking players what's his favorite color, all those good things.
Jameis Singing Winston, to people while riding them places on the bike.
Exactly. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Just get me ready for Super Bowl week, and we're going to talk about it here on this episode.
It would be a shame if Jameis Winston does not remain involved in the league in some way after just seeing the personality coming out this year, from the snow game to all this stuff that he's doing down in New Orleans. But not really the target of our talks today, as we're going to talk Super Bowl, Eagles, Chiefs, and we're going to talk a little bit NFL honors to end the show. If you guys did not know, NFL honors, excuse me, comes on tonight. I think it's 7:30, right after we'll get off the air. And some news. Make sure you're dropping your comments in the comments or in our DMs. We are at the Couch GMs on Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok. And you can watch us live Mondays and Thursdays at 6:30 East. A lot to talk about, Cody. Let's sit back, relax, and chat. A quick apology to the viewers who were with us on Monday, because we were so into our mock draft that we missed a big piece of news that dropped really soon before we got off the air. Rams putting Cooper Kupp on the trade block. Cody, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, real quick. NFL honors starts at 9. I don't know why it's so late, but it starts at 9.
That moved way later than it used to be.
I thought it started at 9 last year too. So when you said 7:30, I was like, oh, do they put it back? Nope, it's at 9. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Cooper Kupp. We're going to talk about Matt Stafford's wife on a podcast going off about, potentially trading Cooper Kupp. He hasn't been moved yet. I mean, things could work out. Things could change. Obviously, this is a contract-driven situation. He's getting up there in age. They have the breakout in Puka Nacua. And, I want to say this doesn't make any sense for the Rams. They are one game away from being, or one play away from being in the NFC Championship game. You had to think they had just as good a shot as the Eagles to beat the Commanders, like the way they were playing down the stretch. And so it's like, why would they get rid of Cooper Kupp? And, Puka had some injuries, and we can talk about where we think Cooper might fit, but this team just lost Aaron Donald and made the playoffs. This team got to the Super Bowl, had OBJ playing lights out, tore his ACL halfway through the game, and they still go on to win. This team just seems to know how to overcome, find players, and I don't know how long that streak's going to continue, but I know it's like a household name, like when the Titans traded Derrick Henry, when the Packers traded Devontae Adams, when the Eagles got rid of Donovan McNabb. That's not the same level because Eagles fans are ready for him to go by that point, but that's just because Eagles fans are crazy.
Yeah.
When a person that's, helped your team win or been a key member, it's time to move. We see at the end, very few players finish their career at the same place. There's not a ton of Jason Kelce's. There's not a ton of Kobe Bryant's. A lot of teams people are floating around at the end. And it just might be that time for Cooper Kupp. But I think there's a lot of great places for him to go this upcoming season.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great places. I just question if it is the right time for them to move on. Like you said, with them being one play away from the NFC Championship game, with them still having Matthew Stafford as their starting quarterback. Like, the way I look at it, if you're going to trade away Cooper Kupp, why are you also not exploring trading away Matt Stafford? And maybe they will, because there's no point in my mind for you to sit around there and spend another 1 year, 2 years with Matt Stafford when you're trying to take pieces away from him. He's an aging quarterback who does have the experience, and they're close to being able to break through and have a shot at another Super Bowl. I think you got to go all or nothing here and either completely hit the reset button, build around some of the young pieces that they have on defense and Puka Nacua with a younger core, or go out there, be aggressive on free agency, keep Cooper Kupp, keep Matt Stafford, and try to find that piece or two that can get you over the edge to get a championship in the next 2 seasons.
But you could argue with just the way the contract, and I agree. I think it's interesting to move on from Cooper with Matt Stafford. I'm 100% agreeing with that. My only thing is we know how valuable Cooper is to this team, but with the contract, with the dead cap number, the amount of money that they would save by doing this, because there is an out, it's still going to be a high dead cap number, but it's going to uh, allow for them to open up some cap space. What if they went out there and replaced Cooper Cup with T. Higgins? Just hypothetically.
Mm-hmm.
Like they go for something younger that way, or maybe it's not T. Higgins. Maybe it's a 1-year flyer on Chris Godwin, and they go get an offensive lineman to bolster up that, and they bring in some pieces there. Like, can they spend their assets more to go all in? Because we know this team, if they feel like they're on the cusp, they're going to start trading their first round picks. They're going to start bringing everybody they can in. We've seen it before. That's how they won their last Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So
they didn't have a first round pick for like 5 straight years back when they had gotten Jared Goff.
yeah, and when they finally had one this year, they hit a home run in Jared Verse. So
yes, they did.
I think it's a questionable move, and I'm still not ready to. This is also one of those that, like, I know Cooper put out the statement. Part of me, I have no inside source, no inside thing. Feels like this was kind of like a, hey, Coop, we'd love to keep you, but we're gonna need you to take a pay cut. He's like, I'm not gonna do that, and they're like, all right, we're gonna look for a trade. And I feel like that's kind of how the situation went, kind of how it seemed like Cooper himself broke the news that, he was getting traded. It wasn't like an insider or something like that. So maybe that's just my, fan in me hoping that, everything goes right. And I understand it's a business. And I'm not ready to rule out that there's not a chance of a reunion or a contract restructure or something. I mean, 2 years ago, you couldn't tell me Deebo Samuel was going to be back with the 49ers. And guess what he was? So there's still
And
a
we would
long.
have thought the same thing about Brandon Ayuk this year.
Yeah. And we said the same thing on Monday about Myles Garrett. Like
Yeah.
at this point, like they might be able to work it out. And I think Cooper is on that situation. But let's talk about those hypothetical trade scenarios on which teams might make a ton of sense for Cooper. Is there any that stick out to you?
See, I am not thinking a lot of hypotheticals coming into these episodes. I'm not doing my homework.
Shocker.
Yeah, exactly. I think if the Bengals lose T. Higgins, Cooper Kupp going there makes sense to me. I don't know if there's like a sign and trade kind of deal where they could make a move like that happen. But I think the Bengals are going to be looking for somebody being a contender. Like they were still 1 game out of a playoff spot this year. If they cannot make a deal to keep T. Higgins in there. Baltimore, someone that comes to mind in my head. They're still looking for somebody to play across from Zay Flowers unless they have a lot more confidence in Rashad Bateman after his breakout year. Those are the 2 that jumped in my head right away.
I mean, let's calm down on breakout year. It was a good year, but let's not call it a breakout. But I get what you're going at. But I mean, I think the one that comes to me right away is the New England Patriots. Now, does Cooper want to go there? How much say does he get in this? How much they try to do right by him situation? But getting a solid, reliable option for Drake May, I think makes a ton of sense. If they could pair him. And then another team that I talked about Myles Garrett, but I think would make sense too, would be the Washington Commanders. I know you Eagles fans would hate to see it, but they have Terry McLaurin. They are Olamide Zaccheaus was running as his number 2 most of the year. If they could bring in a Cooper Kupp on that team to work in the slot for the RPO stuff to open things up downfield for Terry McLaurin, I think the Commanders would be a really fun team for Cooper Kupp, and they have the 3rd most cap space. So they could take on this contract, even give Cooper Kupp an extension if they wanted to, because he is 31 right now. That's another reason why he is on the trade block. He will be going into his year 32 season, which we know is getting up there in age. But that was the 2 teams that jumped out to me. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like you could talk any team into saying Cooper Kupp would be a good fit for them because he is a good player. But at some point, the body's going to break down. We've seen it. He's, been often injured over the last couple of years. You might only get him for 12 games, might only get him for 14 games, but when he's out there, he's still one of the best of the best.
And in the end of all this, he's going to go to the Chiefs anyway, right?
Probably. They're going to trade him for Juju Smith-Schuster and a 6th-round pick and a barbecue sandwich.
Barbecue sandwich. That's a little bit threw me off a little bit.
Well, Kansas City barbecue.
Yeah, exactly. That's fair. And I know you mentioned the Patriots, and I wanted to say them too. I just feel like One, I don't know if Cooper Kupp would want to go there. I don't know if it makes much sense unless he really thinks they're going to ascend quickly, being his age. But I've just seen so many receivers who we thought were going to go there and make a difference that just never broke out. Juju Smith-Schuster is one of those names that was in that case. So I think there at least going to be interest there. I just don't know if that one's going to happen if Cooper Kupp has the ability to block that.
Yeah, and then two more just I looked up a quick article, USA Today, some teams that might be a good fit. I'm not going to read the whole article. I'm just going to read the teams. Houston Texans, remembering they're not going to have Tank Dell. They redid the contract for Stephon Diggs, so he'll be a free agent this year. Pairing him with Nico Collins could be a lot of fun, so I do really like that option. You mentioned Juju. What about his former team in the Pittsburgh Steelers? They've been in the wide receiver sweepstakes for a year, I feel like, and they just haven't been able to pull the trigger. They finally get it over the edge. And then the Denver Broncos is another one on this list, which if you think about it, another, second-year quarterback, they already have a guy in Cortland Sutton that's, getting up there because they pair a guy like Cooper Kupp. So those are some fun, interesting names as well.
I like it. And while we're on the Rams talk here, there was rumors that it was going to be Eagles-Rams in Melbourne, Australia in 2026. Eagles quickly shot down. They weren't going to give up a home game. The Rams giving up a home game to play in Australia in 2026. And I know you had some thoughts on this with like how this is going to work logistically. So I'm going to give you the floor.
Yeah. So I feel like the Eagles buzz was all because of Jordan Mailata. Like I felt like that was never legit, especially knowing where Australia is. Like it's still a 16-hour flight from LAX, which is, it's a 24-hour flight, a flight time from Green Bay, Wisconsin. So like if the Packers and the Rams played, that would be a day. So I keep going back to is like, I don't know how they do this game in season and not play it on the Friday before. Because the other thing, it's a 16-hour time difference. When I was blessed to be on my honeymoon in Fiji, I'm a Packers owner. I wasn't going to miss the Packers game. They're playing Sunday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills, and I'm watching at the resort at 12:30 on a Monday. So like,
so weird.
So I'm watching the game. It's dark out in Buffalo. I got Chris Collinsworth on, and I'm sitting by the pool on a Monday afternoon, just coming back from lunch. Like it's a whole different world on that side of the country. I think it's great that the NFL is expanding. I love it. I talked about it when we talked about the 18 games. Is like I think we're going to get more and more international games, almost like an international slate where every team plays at least one international game a season. I think would be the ultimate goal many years from now. But yeah, the logistics of this whole doesn't make sense to me. So I'm thinking if you play a game on Friday night Eastern time, it's Saturday afternoon their time, then they get the extra rest to make the comeback. I feel like it starts on a Friday, continuing with that trend. But we'll have to see. I think it'll be interesting too. By 2026, do we have the 18th game for a second bye? Is that still too far away? There's a lot of things to work out.
I mean, we'll talk 18th game here in a second because that's been a controversial topic the last few days as well. But in the meantime, like I'm interested to see because they were very particular about putting the Brazil game on that Friday before the season started because of the flight time for that. The trick is there's not really a time zone difference. I think it was 1 hour different, but the flight time was still, I think, 14 or 16 hours. So you need extra time for that recoup time. The Thursday of the season starts, unless they decide to change it up from how they've done it. That's always been like Super Bowl champion hosts the game, raises their banner. You're not going to make a Super Bowl champion go to an international game. So like if you have an Australia game and a Brazil game in the same year,
unless the Rams
how are you going to do that? What was that?
Unless the Rams win the Super Bowl.
I still don't think they would then make the Rams host an international game to start a season.
Well, they probably have just as many fans at SoFi as they would in Australia. I mean,
you're not wrong.
I know. But that's just the interesting, side point of this. But I'm with you. So like that's why I said like, but because of the 16-hour flight, like I think we could get into Brazil being in season, right? Maybe it is a Friday game after a bye kind of thing. So like you get your bye on the front end, go to Brazil. That's why I think the 18-week game, and I know we're going to talk about that in a second, getting that second bye week, I think is going to open up the international schedule where it like mandates that you take one of your buys. Cause now it used to be you got got it after the international. Now the teams get a choice. Now I think if you go international, you get a bye, and then you get a bye somewhere else in the season would be the ultimate goal for the 18th game.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it feels like those Europe games are difficult, but honestly, the flights are shorter. The time zones make it difficult, but like it's not as taxing because of the flight not being as bad. And they've done those in season for so long. When you're talking about these games in Brazil that they want to keep up, a game in Australia is honestly a logistical nightmare. That's tough. But if you're gonna add so many more international games, making all those teams go to Europe is one thing, but I'm thinking they're going to have to add some other games that are closer. I think Mexico City is going to come back. I honestly think the only reason that's been gone is because of the renovations for the World Cup. But I wouldn't be surprised if they played some games in Canada. Those games are a lot easier logistically. You can put them on a Sunday night prime time, and it's not like it's much different than a team traveling to another city in the US. So I think that would probably be the way to fill an international schedule with less tax on the body of some of the NFL players. But there's going to be a lot of uproar from the players union if they really expand that slate as far as that we're hearing they want to.
I mean, I don't know. There'll probably be uproar, but they'll collective bargain against it. But I'm excited for it. I'm looking forward to when we see NFL games in Tokyo. I'm looking forward to when we see them in Sydney, Australia, not just Melbourne. When we see them, in different countries, maybe we get a game in, Egypt or somewhere like that. Just, become the International Football League. I think it'll be a lot of fun. And I think it already reaches so many international fan bases. So to get them involved, I think would be great. And this isn't a one-time thing. Like the Rams are the Australian home team. It's a multi-year contract, similar to how Jacksonville is the home team in London. They're going to continually play a game over there. Honestly, because it's probably the closest stadium to Australia. So it makes a ton of sense, although it being 16 hours. So real quick, I'm just going to run through their 2026 home opponents. And we'll see if there's any that stick out to us that might make a ton of sense. So obviously we're going to have the Cardinals, the 49ers, and the Seahawks. Don't think they're going to go divisional, but maybe they decide to do. They're going to get Dallas, which Dallas going there, big name, big brand. Yeah. They would get the Giants, the Chiefs, the Chargers, and then unnamed NFC North team, depending on how they finish next year. So any of the 4 NFC North teams, if they finish in the same spot. So for me, I think it's between Dallas and the Chargers, and just send both LA teams.
I was thinking between Dallas and the Chargers. The other name that stuck out to me was the Chiefs, but I don't think they would make the Chiefs go out there and play in that situation. So I think having both LA teams go, it's honestly both teams with the shortest flight. So that would make the most sense. And then having Dallas go out there would be a big publicity grab, just because of the magnitude of the Cowboys and the aura.
Yeah. So, but we've talked a lot about it, and I know you have it on our rundown, the 18th game, which is not coming anytime soon. I know NFLPA executive director said no one wants to play an 18th game. No one, which of course they're not going to come out and say yes, because again, this has to be collectively bargained. But despite what he says, I still think we're only just a couple years away from an 18 game, 2 preseason, 2 bye, Super Bowl on President's Day weekend. Players get a little bit extra money, the extra revenue from the 18th TV game or 18th week of TV games. I think it ultimately makes sense for both sides once we get there. The only counter that I've heard is, does it dilute the product even more? Because we're starting to see more and more of the 17 games and the 17 playoffs. Like this year, think back to week 18. How many games really mattered? 5?
Yeah.
Something like and if we get to an 18th game, do we spread in that gap even more, that teams are eliminated by week 16 and we have people? So that would be the only thing. Does the sport get too diluted with too many games like we're seeing in baseball and basketball? Obviously that's 80 and 150, not 18, but just something to think about.
But I mean, your other argument to it is more games, more teams mathematically in it later. Like a team that's 2 games out in a 17 game schedule in week 15 is much different than in week 16 and 18 game schedule. Like, you know what I mean? It's not, things can get further spread apart. I don't think like divisions like what happened with the Bills this year, where like they clinched before December even started, like in the first week of December. Like that's gonna happen occasionally. but I think that made everything look worse this year. But I don't think it's gonna change too much more than what we've seen in the past. This year, I think was a bit of an anomaly where we had a situation. I want to say it was like week 12, where we're like, if all these things happen, we can basically have wild cards locked up in 2 weeks, and some of the things happen. But in the flip side, if everything would have happened in reverse, we could have had a hectic week 18. You don't really know.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the other thing worth noting about all of this and the, will it be good or will it not be, is to your point, we just don't know. And when, the games are being played, sometimes we don't even think, how much does this matter? Let's take the Rams, for instance. They end up sitting people. They're like, yeah, whatever. We'll go to, I forget who they could have had a chance to play the 4 seed, but they end up just taking the 3 seed, end up winning, beating the Vikings anyways. And they're like, yeah, sure, we're going to rest our guys. Where, like, you know, Cowboys, Commanders didn't mean much because they were all locked, but then they played a lights out game. That game went right down to the wire. So it was a lot of fun. So does it truly matter, or is it a good game? I think also is two different questions on how it will be played out.
That's true. Some of the best games I've seen were those dumb Thursday night games between a 5-win and a 7-win team. And because they were evenly matched, it's like, wow, that was a great game. It just didn't mean much in the scope. But
yeah, tell the
I mean,
Giants and the Colts the game didn't matter.
Exactly.
Yeah,
the Giants played their game of the year, and they were going for the number one pick.
Yeah, they lost out the number 1 pick, but they stopped the Colts from making the playoffs. So a little bit of Eli Peyton revenge, I guess. The ghost of them. And I do also think too, when you look at the schedule right now, obviously we know we rotate a AFC. So if you look at an NFC team, they rotate the AFC, then they play, and they also rotate the NFC. They play their division, and then they play the North and the South, and that leaves the West. They add an 18th game. You're guaranteed to play one team in every division in your conference. And I think that also opens up things for scheduling, getting more eyes and more people to follow the team, and just brings an overall more, because really, how often are you paying attention to the NFC West on the years that you're not going to play them at all? Or how often are we paying attention to, fantasy wise, we pay attention to the players, but how are the teams doing? If they're not up coming the schedule, we're not paying as close eye.
Yeah, that or you're fighting for them in a wild card spot. But exactly, it's going to open up more. I'm interested to see, are they going to open up more interconference games? Like the last time they expanded on the schedule, they added in one interconference game that lined up on the opposite side.
That is true too. Maybe they go with a second interconference game.
That way you're playing teams more often than 4 years, more frequently than you had been. Before it was like, if you're not in the same conference, you're playing that team every 4 years. You're playing them at home every 8 years. People that are locked in on their team and don't really pay attention to the other conference till the playoffs, you're really not paying attention to the other conference, especially.
Yeah, and I think that also opens up things for fans that want to go to these away stadiums or want to view their fans. For example, I'm a big Packers fan. Obviously, if you're listening to the show, my cousin, big Bengals fan. We went to Packers Bengals. The field goal missed, and we're like, all right, next time we're going to go to Packers Bengals in Green Bay. We had to wait 4 years for that because we knew when it was coming. And if we want to go back to Cincinnati, unless something changes, we're going to have to wait 8 years in between that time. So let's add some more interconference games to increase the likelihood that it might not take that full 8 years to get back to seeing your favorite team in that home city, especially if you're, a Packers fan living in Cincinnati and you can't travel to the games.
Yep.
Getting your team to come to the hometown would be much better.
Exactly. That's my thoughts on it, but we'll see how they would go about it if that happens. It sounds like there's going to be a fight. It's definitely not going to happen next season.
No,
I'm still with you. I think 2-3 years down the road, we're going to be talking about it.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued, and we can spend all off season on this. So I'll say this real quick, and then we can move on. I think what we're going to see and how we're going to get this done is they might get a little bit more, regiment, but they're going to essentially, I think, get rid of OTAs and mini camp and give them a longer break in between season, and then almost bring them back in June. So we're June through February, and then that whole break is off for the players. They're going to move things around that way. Maybe it's June or February to July right? Or if you're not in the Super Bowl, December, January, beginning of January to July. You would almost have 6 months off, and then you get back and it's football. Then you have instead of having like a couple weeks here, a weekend here, like just give them that full rest. And I think that'll be one of the things that we hear talked about. It'll be talked about as like practice schedule and practice regulations, but I think that'll be how we'll get them over the finish line.
I could definitely see it because that's just going to be more value for the players. But we have more to talk about in the offseason with that. Moving on, one more thing I have on our news notes. Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2025 is also supposed to be announced tonight. I'm not sure if that's going to happen at NFL Honors or not, but if we hear anything about it before we get off the air, sometimes things leak. We'll let you know. Are you ready to talk about the Super Bowl?
Yeah. Does that mean you want me to hit my bumper?
Yeah. I wasn't expecting you to have a bumper.
It's been in here for all season because we had one last year, and I've just been waiting for 365 days.
365 days later, we have the Chiefs back in the Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles, rematch of the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Over under on the game, 48.5 points. Eagles underdogs by 1.5 points, so a very tight point spread on this one. We'll run through some injuries, talk about any kind of bets or bold predictions, and then give our game predictions at the end of this. Kind of an open forum. We'll just kind of jump right in. Do you want me to start with injuries?
Yeah, run through them.
Cool. So we talked about Sky Moore participating in practice. He was limited. It looks like he's going to be good to go. The Eagles' offensive line was dealing with injuries to guard and center. To Dickerson and Juergens, they're both full participants, and they are going to be good to go. We talked about Brandon Graham coming off of injured reserve. He's going to play, and he did announce that he is not going to be back for next season. He will retire after this game. So one final game, one final Super Bowl appearance for Brandon Graham with the Eagles. And there's some rumors that there could be a flu bug going around the Eagles locker room, but the only confirmed case so far is defensive tackle Jalen Carter, who did miss practice was limited in practice on Wednesday, but practiced fully on Thursday. So that's your really quick rundown. Chiefs looking pretty healthy. Eagles dealing with a couple of bang up injuries, but look like they're going to be pretty much fine.
Yeah, I think all in all, this game is good. We're not going to have knock on wood, it doesn't sound like we're going to have any major injuries. I'm sure after the game, we're going to hear that Jalen Carter lost 13 pounds or something because of the flu, but then was able to, fill his water weight back up because he was so dehydrated or something like that. But outside of that, I think barring anything crazy, we're going to have a good game, and it should be a lot of fun. I know this is a game that a lot of people that don't live in Philly or don't live in Kansas City aren't that excited about. Just they've already seen it. They're tired of the Chiefs. They're tired of the Eagles. There's just not enthusiasm about this game. It's like, oh, I guess the Super Bowl is this Sunday. Like there's just not that buzz that we're so accustomed to because it feels like we're in that same situation. And all I would say to that is just try to enjoy the game. We know it's going to be a good game. And sometimes these games make for the best opportunities. Everybody was saying they were tired of the Golden State Warriors when they were up 3-0 against the Cavaliers about to win their third championship. Maybe it was only their second, but doesn't matter. They were tired of this super team, and the Cavaliers come back. Everyone thought they were tired of the Patriots, and then the Patriots were losing 28-3, having a great time, come back and win and broke everyone's heart twice that day. Like, these games are going. This last time, it went right down to the wire on how this game ended, and I think we're going to see a similar game plan. I know people are already talking about, the Eagles are in their color jerseys, so that favors them. Vic Fangio's 0-8 against Patrick Mahomes, so that favors the Chiefs. Like, find whatever storyline you want, bet on whatever Gatorade color you think it's going to be, but.
The coin toss.
Tails. Can't be tails never fails. I 100% agree with that. That's where I would go. Take the over on the national anthem. Have some fun.
No, but I want to just piggyback this off of a comment you made after the AFC Championship game. How you're everyone's tired of the Chiefs winning and beating the Bills in the playoffs, but what we're not tired of is Bills Chiefs in the playoffs, because every single time it's a good game. And I would think Eagles and Chiefs is getting into a similar thing. Like, obviously not playing as much. They only had in the Super Bowl, but they had a regular season game last year that was fantastic. 2 years ago in the Super Bowl was a very close game, came down to the wire. I expect this one to be the same. So yeah, if you're just a fan of a good football game, I think this is everything we could have asked for in that case.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it doesn't, look like it's going to be a good game, and then it's the Seahawks blowing out the Broncos, and we were all watching TLC by halftime because it was more entertaining than the football game. But I don't see that happening. I think this is going to be a good game,
and
like
I
you mentioned.
also don't see a Rams Patriots punt fest either. Like,
I think there's a possibility for that, if we're being 100% honest. These defenses are good. These offenses have had struggles. What happens if Saquon Barkley doesn't get a 60-yard run? How often do they consistently move the ball? What happens if there isn't, a big play from Xavier Worthy or a critical third down caught by Travis Kelce? These defenses the defenses are the strength of both of these teams. So as much as we want, a high scoring game, the over under is only 48.5. That's 24-24 and a half point. Like, there's going to be a lower scoring game, but we just want it to be close. And that's what really matters.
Well, and 24-24 is not a Rams Patriots punt fest. That game was 13-6 or something like that.
No, but what I meant by that was they're not already anticipating a lot of points.
Yeah.
And in that game, they were anticipating more. It was Sean McVay, and the defense came out and stopped them. I mean, Brandon Cooks dropped a touchdown, which could have added more to that. Like, Super Bowls can get crazy, and we could see. I mean, we don't want to see injuries, so we're not even going to talk about that. But like I mentioned, what happens if Saquon gets contained and it's all on Jalen Hurts? Can he pull through? What happens if it becomes a field goal? They're moving the ball, but they're having a hard time getting in, and we're sitting 15-15 in the fourth quarter with 5 field goals each. It'd be an interesting game, but not what people are going to want to see.
It's very true. And I'll talk all the storylines that you want to hear, but I'm just going to drop a couple more Kempy bets on the bottom of the screen here. He's saying under 123.5 seconds for the national anthem. That's fun. I love all the fun, stupid props you can bet on in the Super Bowl. Stuff like that, coin toss. One of my favorites, no Nick Sirianni crying at the national anthem, which is plus 120 on, I believe, DraftKings, not a sponsor.
Is that just at the national anthem?
I would I don't know. He didn't. I never actually saw that bet pop up. So, Kempy, feel free to respond in the chat if you are still listening in here. I know he cried at the national anthem last time. That's why I thought that.
Yeah, I would have thought that, but I'm like, is it like how mad would you be? You put $100 on that minus 20. He doesn't cry the national anthem. The Eagles going to win the Super Bowl, and he starts crying, and they're like, "Oh, he cried. You're out."
Yeah, it's very true. That is very true. It also has to be like, does it end at the end of the game? I don't know. On the deep web, so I'm not sure.
Oh, good old deep web.
Yeah.
Web.
Deep. Okay. Yeah. What you said. No, but there's a bunch of other bets that I like that only come around the Super Bowl. You can bet on octopus. If you don't know what that is, it's somebody to score a touchdown and then the same person scores a 2-point conversion.
Did we have
a bet on if there will or will not be a flea flicker. What was that, Cody?
I said I feel like there was a octopus in one of the playoff games.
I believe there was. But the only reason I know what an octopus is even is because of actually the 2022 Super Bowl, when Jalen Hurts scored an octopus to get the game tied at 35 at the end of the game.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So another fun one. Will any kick hit a crossbar upright? Looking at, we got some doink specials going on here. So,
all right. So let's get back into the game and a little bit off the prop bets. What is your way that the Eagles, since you're wearing your Devonta Smith jersey, unless that's Nick Foles, I can't tell if it's a 6 or
it's
a 9.
Devonta Smith.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
because you're the Eagles fan, how do the Eagles win the Super Bowl?
I think there's two guys that are key factors. One of them, not shocking, it's Saquon Barkley. And I know we talk about like what happens if Saquon Barkley gets contained. I don't know if I believe he will be, because I saw Joe Mixon run for almost 5 a carry on the Chiefs in the playoffs. And then I saw the Bills, Josh Allen and James Cook combined for 6.5 a carry. Like, when you look at it that way, the Chiefs' run defense hasn't been fantastic, and now they're going against the best run offense in the league. Maybe they do shut him down. That would make it interesting. But the other X factor is Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith hasn't had a bad game against the Chiefs in his entire career. He's had more than 6 catches, 2+ explosive plays, scored a touchdown in almost every single one of those games. So everyone's going to be looking at A.J. Brown. But I think my X factor for the Eagles' passing attack is actually Devontae Smith.
It's an interesting one. Worth noting, he has been limited last 2 days with a hamstring injury, so that's something to monitor as well.
He's been dealing with a hamstring since the divisional round, I believe, though.
Yeah, I get that, but still limited, still dealing with it. Could be something that pops up. Again, we're not going to talk about that because we don't want that to happen, but something to keep in the back of your mind. And I hear you when you say, like, you can't stop Saquon Barkley, or you know, can they actually contain him? And I don't think, like, from a down in, down out standpoint, they're going to stop him on a regular basis. But if they keep all his runs under 15 yards, will they continue to run the ball? Will they, you know, what happens if they go down and they're not getting that big play success that they've been so accustomed to? How does that change it? I mean, for me, the way the Eagles win this game is whether they win the coin toss or the Chiefs defer, they get the ball, they get the lead, and they don't give it up.
Yep.
And they can play into their strengths. I think it's more important for the Eagles to get a lead than I think it is for the Chiefs to get a lead, because the Chiefs just know how to, you know, fight back and close games. I'm not saying the Eagles can't, but the Eagles' strength is relying on their defense and running the ball. And, you know, can they have a lead in the fourth quarter and go on one of their vintage 11-minute drives? That's, for me, the keys for Philadelphia. And look, they're going to be irritated, just like San Fran was, that the Chiefs beat them in the Super Bowl a few years back. Can they do what San Fran couldn't? In the fourth quarter, come up, make the plays, and win the game. And, like, honestly, if we went actually, let's a fun exercise. Let's just do it right now.
Okay.
Let's go position group by position group and say which team has it better.
Okay.
And I think there's only going to be like 3 for the Chiefs. Quarterback
is the Chiefs.
It's the Chiefs.
Yep.
Running back, it's the Eagles.
Is the Eagles. Yep.
Wide receiver, it's the Eagles.
The Eagles.
Tight end
is the Chiefs.
Is it?
I still think playoff Kelsey trumps the good run that Dallas Goedert has had.
Okay, so
and then depth also, like Grant Calcaterra was fine, but Noah Gray is a better tight end too. So I think even depth wise, you're still looking at Chiefs.
Okay, I was gonna give them the Chiefs, but I don't think it's a slam dunk home run.
Yeah.
Like, if it was a slider, it would be slightly over to the Chiefs compared to all the way across like these other ones have been. Yeah. But we'll give it to the Chiefs. Offensive line, Eagles. Defensive line, Eagles. Linebackers. This one, I think, is
that's a toss up. I think
that one is a toss up. If you could talk me into the Chiefs or the Eagles on that one. Yep. Obviously, the Eagles have the All Pro in Zach Bond. So if we're talking just this year, you would think you'd have the Eagles, but the Chiefs have, you know, Nick Bolton, who has had a really good game against them the last time. I think that's a wash. Secondary, I think we have to go with the Eagles on this one, as much as I love Trent McDuffie. But as a whole, I think if we're including corners and safeties, I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll even go back and just say I'll give linebackers to the Chiefs because of depth too. I think the missing Nakobe Dean, because he got hurt during the playoffs, does hurt the Eagles a little bit outside of Zach Bond.
Name but the other Chiefs linebacker. I'm just
no, but even yet, like, you're looking at, like you said, there's maybe three position groups that we're giving to the Chiefs. The Eagles are the better team, but how much does the X factor Mahomes, the X factor Kelsey, like make a difference? I feel like those X factors are what's going to come down to making the difference in this game. So the Eagles just gave up a ton of yards and catches to Zach Ertz. Now you're facing an arguably more talented Travis Kelsey. Are they going to be able to contain him? What are they going to do to that? Is CJ Gardner-Johnson going to be that guy? Are they still going to trust Oren Burks, a backup linebacker in that position? Are the Chiefs going to be able to get a run game going? The Eagles have been pretty stout against the run. The Chiefs haven't been able to. I would think the Chiefs are still going to stay in the game, no problem, without a run game. But if the Chiefs can get a run game going, watch out.
Yeah, I would agree. And the last one, I saved it for last, but the one, because I was going to push the linebackers as a wash, and my three were quarterback, tight end, and head coach. And I think that that trio, as much as everybody is so tired of talking about Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs, Travis Kelsey, Taylor Swift, all the stuff that comes along with that, those three are the reason that you feel like the Chiefs can beat anybody. Yes, Chris Jones is elite. He might be the best defensive line player on the field, not the best defensive line unit. The Chiefs have good play. Trent McDuffie, I talked about him. You could argue he's the best cornerback of the group. So the Chiefs have some players at the key positions. They just don't have the depth. So those three for me. And then I know I've talked about this before, and I always sounds like I'm disrespecting Jalen Hurts, and I do not want it to come across that way. But like I said, if they're down and the game is on the line, the only thing that's you have is Jalen Hurts throwing the ball. I don't like your chances. Now, I hear all you Eagles fans like, did you watch the last Super Bowl when he could have won MVP despite losing? Well, he had 3 rushing touchdowns, but he had a really great game, and they're going to need that again from him. So he has that ability in him, and maybe it's just the bias of getting pulled for Tua in the championship game 8 years ago. You know, maybe that's some of that is in my head. But Steve Spagnuolo loves to blitz. How does he handle it? Can the Chiefs stay in their rush lanes and not open up those holes and contain him from stepping up? How much does the knee play a factor? I know he's not on the injury report, but is he banged up? You know, teams lie all the time.
I'm not too worried about the knee just because I saw him look very mobile in a game since the knee injury happened. If he were to, get more injured since that, I'd be surprised. But I get what you're saying. It's still something to keep an eye on.
And then takes a hit to it. Like, how does it respond after a hit?
That's true. I mean, like, we can look at Mahomes 2 years ago, injured the ankle again in the Super Bowl, the same ankle he hurt, previously. And then that obviously became a factor. But that can be said about, he can get any kind of bang up injury during a game in general. It doesn't even have to just be that knee. But
for sure,
the only thing that I'll give an argument back on the Jalen Hurts thing, since that game, that Alabama game where he got benched for Tua that you're talking about, the only performance in the playoffs that I can remember where he really flopped, I guess it'd be 2. They were both against Tampa Bay. One was in his first year starting. I kind of give him a pass on that. Like, obviously, you're still growing a lot as a player into the league at that point. And then the other one was last season's wild card game when the Eagles in general were reeling. And I think because they were reeling, people were not giving them a lot of credit as an offense, but they were actually still a borderline top 10 offense that year. He's been coming up big in clutch situations since that. And I think that has to give him at least a little bit of credit coming into a game like this if you do end up needing him to put together a game-tying drive, a game-winning drive.
Yeah, if you need one drive. My whole point is, and again, Jalen Hurts fits what Philly does so well. I think we've talked about this, like even offline. We've talked about how he fits what he does so well. He has some great leadership traits. Like, he's a guy that you want on your team. But he's also the guy that averages the least amount of pass yards in playoff games, under 200 passing yards. Because the arm is not his strength. Like, no one will say Jalen Hurts' arm is his strength. No one. And as an Eagles fan, you're going to defend him to your blue in the face because that's your guy, and you got to. I mean, you could say the same thing about Jordan Love, and Jordan Love was in this game. I'll be telling him he's the next Joe Montana because that's what fandom does to people. Okay, maybe I wouldn't go that far, but you get my point.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts, if you give me one drive, I think he can do it. Look at the 4th down play to A.J. Brown, against the Commanders when it was 14-12.
Yep.
Great ball. But if they're down 2 scores in the second half, Those are my concerns. The thing that I like about this game, and is why I tend to like the Eagles in this game, which I don't know if Eagles fans should want me to say that or not, is their defense, their run game. They've taken the weight off of him. And I'd say the same thing about Jared Goff if he was in this game. Don't think this is just the Jalen Hurts thing. Like I said this about Brock Purdy last year. Like they're system quarterbacks, and the only Jalen Hurts' legs is almost like system quarterback plus. He's not just system quarterback. And there's nothing wrong with being a system quarterback. Most of them are. There's not, 32 Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jacksons out there. I get that.
It seems like all the not system quarterbacks are in the AFC too, which is why I feel like the league is two separate leagues.
Right. Like if the Vikings made this, I would have the same concerns with Sam Darnold.
100%.
And I would like Jalen Hurts over Sam Darnold. So again, I don't want to make it sound like I'm just like poo-pooing on Jalen Hurts. I just think if, when it's that fourth down drive and Spags blitzes him every play and they know it's coming, how does he respond? And I hope they overcome it. I do. For your sake, for friends of the show's sake, they're Eagles fans, for family members of the Eagles fans, I hope they overcome it. But that's the thing I'm watching forward to the most.
And that's the one thing that, at least through his entire career, Jalen Hurts has struggled with, is attacking the blitz. This season, his numbers are actually good. I think they've done a lot of good work on it. But you can ask Josh Allen what happened to him 2 weeks ago. Spags threw that crazy blitz at him on fourth down, made him throw up a hero ball, and it still actually should have been completed. Props to Josh Allen. Kincaid couldn't quite hold on, but it was one of those things after the game. He's like, I never saw that coming. I haven't seen that blitz before. And that's what Spags is known to do. And he's definitely somebody who can affect this game by never showing you the same look. And then same on the other side, where even though Patrick Mahomes is 8-0 against Vic Fangio, he gave Vic a lot of praise in his press conferences earlier this week, saying, like, I've never seen the same look twice against Fangio. And that's saying something, considering I played in the same division as him for 4 seasons.
Yeah.
So,
Vic Fangio is a wild card. And then the other wild card is Andy Reid on a bye. We all know how good he is.
Andy Reid on a bye.
And against his former team. Like, when you take for me, the big thing about the Super Bowl is when you take away the team names, or like everything that surrounds the team names and why we hate them for everything that's not related to what's on the football field, and look at these two teams, how they're built, how they're going to play this game, that's what gets me excited for this one.
Because everything lines up to, like, you have the same amount of arguments as to why the Eagles could win this game as to why the Chiefs could win this game. And that's exactly why I don't see this being one side either way, and why you should be excited despite if you are a fan of one of the teams or not. Exactly.
No, I think there's more arguments why the Eagles should win the game, but then there's the Chiefs, and it's like, how do you pick against the Chiefs? And like, it just makes a super fascinating game. Do you want to give your score prediction? Do you want to put that out there? If not, don't want to be superstitious. I understand.
I'm going to, okay, I'll put it out there, but I think you and I can save it. You can put yours out if you want now. We'll save it for our post on morning of, like we always do.
Well, I mean, the people listening can get it. Why not? You don't, okay. Or you not have one right now?
No, I have it. I'll put it out. Fine. I won't be superstitious. Don't
make it into a short. Just make it a post on Sunday morning.
Okay. Sounds
good.
But
if you listen to the podcast, you get early access. That's how it should
be. It's funny. My biggest concern in this one, if it comes down to it late, is Jake Elliott. Something we haven't talked about yet. He's been struggling. But he's mostly been struggling with extra points. He's actually still one of the most accurate kickers in NFL history in the playoffs, kicking field goals, while he's also the least accurate extra point kicker in the playoffs in NFL history. So I'm seeing a 28-27 game, thanks to a missed field goal going down to the end, and they have to line up for a field goal for him to win it, and he hits it to win 30-28.
You have the Eagles 30.
Eagles win 30-28.
Interesting. I like that. So that would be the over.
Yes.
So you're also taking a higher scoring game. And I think that is, I really like and I've gone back and forth on if I want to take the Chiefs, if I want to take the Eagles, if I want to go with my heart if I want to go with my head. And I was going to bring up kicking too. And I think that was one thing we didn't talk about was kicker. I didn't add them in my list, but I would say kicker would also favor the Chiefs.
Yep.
Slightly, but because of the extra points, it would favor the Chiefs. But I think the Eagles are going to get it done. Winning 3 times in a row is so hard.
There's a reason no one's done it since pre the Super Bowl era.
Thank you for saying pre-Super Bowl area
You're
and
welcome.
not just saying no one ever done it, because I was about to come through the screen and fight you.
I have been on a podcast with you for, is this our 4th season? I know you better than that.
But I am going to go, I think, with my official prediction as the Eagles getting it done, winning 23, missing the extra point, to 17. That is my final score. 23-17. I'm taking the under.
You're taking the under. I'm interested to see, how is this is this a Eagles 10-minute final drive to end the game, or is this a Chiefs get the ball back but can't get it done, which would be, I think, the ultimate way to have this end, being as, Mahomes is going to get it done if he has an opportunity at the end of the game?
No, I think it's going to be more of just holding the ball too long. Like, Mahomes might get the ball back with 30 seconds, no timeouts, needing a touchdown.
That's all he needs if he asks Josh Allen. I feel like we've been bashing Josh Allen this episode. I am so sorry.
That was 13 seconds, 2 timeouts, and only needing a field goal.
Fair.
But give me a 10-plus minute. I'll make it a little more realistic. Give me an 8.5-minute fourth quarter drive tied 17-17 that ends with a Jalen Hurts tush push to go up 23-17. Misses the extra point. Eagles fans are screaming, and they don't make it done. But they don't leave enough time on the clock to get it done.
I definitely, it's within the realm of possibilities. Only thing I know is it's either going to be that last drive means everything, or that some defense is making a ridiculous play. I don't see there being a last drive that doesn't really mean anything in this game.
No, I agree. And maybe it's a Brandon Graham strip sack of Patrick Mahomes.
Tom Brady would be livid on the broadcast.
I know, but maybe it's something like that. Maybe they do get the ball back and it's a defensive stop, a strip sack, a forced fumble. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, forces Hollywood Brown to fumble, on a crosser that looked like he was going for 40, end up being a fumble turnover on downs. Eagles kneel it out, kind of something like that. Whatever it is, I think it does come down to that final quarter, final 5 minutes, and that's how it should be, end with a bang.
I like it, Cody. Before we get out of here, we mentioned NFL honors at the top of the show. Do you want to talk about some of the award nominees and who we think is going to win?
Of course. And I don't have a bumper for this, so we're going to just go right into it. But just
Sounds
a
good.
friendly reminder that although the award show is happening tonight, votes were casted after week 18. So when we talk about MVP, we cannot talk about the head-to-head between, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Did that have a weight? It didn't. The votes were already in. But you have it in a list. Why don't you kick it off with the first one? We can go pretty lightning round, just remind everyone of the nominees, because they have narrowed down all 5 nominees for each award and who we think is going to win.
Yes, sir. So we'll start with Comeback Player of the Year. The nominee finalists were Joe Burrow, Sam Darnold, J.K. Dobbins, Christian Gonzalez, and Damar Hamlin. I know there was some debate on this one on how injuries can affect if you actually win Comeback Player or not. So this one's going to be interesting to me.
Yeah, so I think injuries can affect them. I know last year, was it that we saw somebody win that we're like, what do they come back from? Or was it Joe Flacco that won last year?
Yeah, it was Joe
Flacco won. Maybe it was the Geno Smith year. It's like, what did he come back from? He'd never been. It's like, that's most improved. It's called comeback player. People wanted this to be named the Alex Smith Award after he won it for coming back after his horrific injury. So I think injuries do play a factor in this. And for me, it's between 2 guys. It's between J.K. Dobbins after what he did and Joe Burrow. And the reason I say Joe Burrow is not because he really came back. He had an elite season, but his season was phenomenal, and he is about to go no playoffs, no awards. So I think they squeeze him in with the comeback player. Terrible reasoning, but that's what I'm going with.
That is a media reason, if I ever heard one, though, which is why it's probably going to be correct. Shout out to Mar Hamlin for being on this list, but I think the hype on him has kind of come back down. Like if he was going to win for it, it was going to be last year.
At least he did start most of
But
the
he
year
did
this
actually
year.
start this year. That's the big, yeah, exactly. He started 2 years ago before the situation, and then last year he was basically a special teamer backup, and now this year is a starter again. But I'm going to go J.K. Dobbins, even though you almost convinced me Joe Burrow for that reason.
So Sam Darnold's going to win.
Probably.
But all right, coach of the year, we got Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell, Sean Payton, Dan Quinn, and Andy Reid. I think two of these we can eliminate off the top. That's Andy Reid and Sean Payton. Andy Reid's not going to win. He hasn't won the last couple of years. He's not going to win this year. Sean Payton, congrats on getting the Broncos to the playoffs. Dan Quinn, I think if it wasn't for week 18, he would have a really good shot if we were counting the Lions game. But because we can't, remember we can't, I think it's between Dan Campbell and Kevin O'Connell. And for me, as much as I think Dan Campbell's going to win it, I think it has to go to Kevin O'Connell and what he did with Sam Darnold.
I agree. I'm going Kevin O'Connell because of Sam Darnold, but my number 2 wasn't even Dan Campbell. It was Dan Quinn, just because of the turnarounds he had so quickly with a franchise down in Washington.
Alrighty, defensive rookie of the year, Cooper DeJean, Brandon Fisk, Quinyon Mitchell, Chop Robinson. Shout out to you for being the only Ram or Eagle not on this list. And Jared Verse. And I think this one's pretty easy for me. I think it's Jared Verse. It typically always goes to front seven guys. I know as an Eagles fan, you want it to be one of the 2 DBs.
Yeah.
But sacks are flashy.
Sacks are flashy. Sacks always end up winning defensive player of the year too, unless somebody has like 6 pick sixes in a season. Which is something completely out of this realm and not in any of these guys. I think it's going to be Jared Verse for sure. But it's interesting that it's 2 Rams, 2 Eagles.
Yeah, and then a Miami Dolphin. So,
yep.
I mean, it would be cool, like, if Quinyon has it, like, in terms of, like, passing numbers or touchdowns given up, like, was it 2 on the year?
I think he might have only given up 1, and it was right at the end of the season.
But, like, that's also, like, very eye of the beholder who's doing the rankings. Like, they said Lane Johnson didn't give up a sack when I watched Rashawn Gary get a sack on him in week 1. But that's another conversation for a different day. So I agree with Jared Verse. Offensive rookie of the year, Brock Bowers, Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Bo Nix, Brian Thomas Jr. Great class, but
fantastic
no debate.
Class.
It's Jaden Daniels.
It's Jaden Daniels. I mean, number 1, quarterbacks always get that bump. Number 2, the man was amazing for pretty much the entire season. There was maybe 2 weeks I can be like, he kind of struggled there, but most of it was because of injury. And one of the games he didn't even finish. It was Marcus Mariota. My heart wants to give some love to either Brock Bowers or Brian Thomas. Even Bo Nix deserves a little bit more talk than he's going to get, but it's Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, if there was going to be an upset, though, I would say Brock Bowers pulling off the upset could be something on the night, but I don't think it'll happen. Yeah. But if he does, it's another. Sound like a broken record, but these are picked before the playoffs start, so you wouldn't get the Jaden Daniels versus Lions, Jaden Daniels versus. Why am I blanking on the? Thank you. Like you wouldn't get those 2 games.
Defensive player of the year, we had Zach Bond, Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson, Patrick Surtain, and TJ Watt. This one's tough because, I mean, I think Zach Bond had a fantastic year, but I'm surprised to see him on as many lists as I've seen him on. My head's going, it's going to be Myles Garrett.
Yeah, I think Myles Garrett has a really strong chance, which would only increase his trade value. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Patrick Surtain gets it. Had an elite defense, was a key contributor to that. The Broncos were kind of a surprise team to help carry his team, being the best player on that defense. Give me him.
Defensive MVP is going to be Trey Hendrickson, though, because he's the only person on the Bengals defense that did anything worth anything this season.
That is valid as well. 2 more awards. Offensive player of the year, Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson. It's a 2-man race for me, but really a 1-man race. I think you agree.
I do. Now, can I announce the MVP finalists at the same time here? Because I have something I wanted to look at.
Okay.
So MVP finalists: Josh Allen, Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, Jared Goff, Lamar Jackson. So what's interesting to me here, Josh Allen's on the MVP list. He's not on the Offensive Player of the Year list. Makes me lean. I'm thinking it's going to be Lamar Jackson.
Oh, that's interesting. That's
and then
not
I'll
right.
just jump ahead, and I think MVP is going to be Josh Allen.
Okay.
I think they would have been smarter, and I mean, maybe they're just trying to get more people recognized, to put Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson on both. It makes me think like Josh Allen's kind of a lock for MVP, because I don't see them letting him walk away with nothing.
I hear that. That's a really interesting take. I was completely surprised. But I think he is going to walk away with nothing. My pick is Saquon Barkley, offensive player, Lamar Jackson, MVP. I think
if you're looking at numbers, MVP should be Lamar Jackson. If you're looking at most valuable, I think Josh Allen edges him.
No,
but
I agree.
Is it close?
Yeah, I would have no problem if Josh Allen or Lamar won it. I think Lamar might have done enough at the end of the season with the numbers to do it, where Josh Allen would just had, carrying the team on his back, basically. And I think I said this before. I kind of thought Josh Allen should have got it last year. Lamar got it. I think Lamar should get it this year if Josh gets it. You told me the last 2 years, one time the MVP went to Josh Allen, one time went to Lamar. That feels right. If Lamar gets another one, congrats on his third.
Exactly. And dream scenario would be Saquon Barkley winning MVP and Jamar Chase winning Offensive Player of the Year. But there's no way they let a quarterback without either of the two awards.
That would be wild, though.
It would be. That's what I would like to see, to kind of finally break the trend of quarterbacks being as important as they are for these awards.
So just because you brought up both lists and you're comparing it and saying Josh Allen isn't on MVP, I would point out is only on MVP, not on Offensive Player of the Year. I would point out that Lamar Jackson's teammate, Derrick Henry, is also nominated for Offensive Player of the Year. Where's Josh Allen's? If you want to go by what that V stands for, invaluable, that's the case.
And that's why I think Josh Allen wins MVP.
Hey, I think be fun. I don't know if I'm going to stay up late enough to watch it, because I just read about it on X in the morning. But George, last thing before you go.
Yeah.
Are you going to have a meat and cheese tray at your Super Bowl party?
I feel like I have to have one just for Tyler. I'll make a small one just for him.
He's not even going to be there?
No.
But, all right. Final things. You want to give me a bold prediction? You want to just say go Birds? I don't care what it is. What are your last podcast before the Super Bowl? What is your final thoughts?
I was adamant talking about how I don't think the Chiefs are going to be able to stop Saquon Barkley. And I gave you my evidence earlier. Feel free to rewind if you want to. My bold prediction is Saquon Barkley comes away with a lot of hardware. Not only did I say the Eagles are going to win, but I think he's going to get 205 yards in this game or more. That would mean that he would break the single season rushing record, regular season and playoffs combined. He would break the single game record for a Super Bowl. And he would break the all-purpose record, if I'm not mistaken, with that as well. So there's my bold prediction. MVP. What was that?
And win Super Bowl MVP if he puts.
And more than likely win Super Bowl MVP if that did happen. You're correct. So there's my bold prediction. Go Birds. And we'll talk to you all on Monday.
Well, man, I don't even. George trying to end the show, not even trying to give me a last word.
I'm not trying to say another word, but now you're going to make me say another word. I'm just.
Right. So, honestly, but as always, thanks for checking it. Campy points out it is on his birthday. So what a day for Saquon Barkley. Maybe the Chiefs have something to say about it. Maybe Taylor Swift pops up at the halftime show. Maybe you're just watching for the commercials. Or you just want to listen to us react on Monday, because we'll be back on 6:30 then talking about it. Make sure you follow us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, all those good places. I'm Cody Roadcap. That's George Hurst. We'll talk to you on Monday.
George.